Which brings us to a major stress test of the theory. Because, let's be honest, it is quite easy to maintain a broad, positive perspective when we are discussing a cheap vinyl umbrella that belongs to a giant corporation.
Oh, absolutely.
But human nature is far more protective when the stakes are personal.
That is the obvious hurdle here. I mean, having a high frequency over a $3 piece of plastic is one thing.
Right.
But what happens when a highly valuable item vanishes?
Like what?
Like a Rolex watch, a wallet with all your credit cards, or a laptop containing sensitive work data. The emotional stakes change the entire equation.
They really do. And LeoBunny addresses this escalation directly. And this is where she issues a profound critique of modern society. She warns against our reliance on what she calls math-like logic.
Math-like logic.
Yes, when something of high value disappears, society demands that we aggressively apply a deterministic formula. The formula goes exactly like this. The item is missing, therefore it must have been stolen, therefore there absolutely must be a culprit.
Wow. It just becomes this automatic, unthinking chain reaction. Missing equals stolen. Stolen equals culprit.
Exactly. And from an evolutionary standpoint, this rigid cause and effect thinking is actually a survival mechanism.
How so?
Well, our brains are pattern recognition machines, and a missing valuable item is a deeply distressing break in the pattern. Uncertainty, the idea that things can just randomly vanish without reason, is terrifying to the primitive brain.
So we fill the gap.
Right. By assigning blame and identifying a culprit, we manufacture a sense of control. Even if that control involves conflict, the brain prefers a known enemy over an unpredictable universe.
That is so true.
But LeoBunny points out that by insisting on this formula, we lock ourselves into an incredibly aggressive timeline. We obligate ourselves to long investigations, cultivate paranoia, and endure immense stress.
And to illustrate how absurd this rigid logic can be, she actually shares some wildly mind-bending anecdotes from her own life in the source material.
She gets pretty out there.
She really does. She talks about how once you drop the need for a culprit, reality gets very weird. She casually mentions a bottle of cologne in her house that would simply vanish and reappear in completely different locations, defying any logical explanation.
Just teleporting cologne.
Yeah. No roommates moving it, no logical culprit, just gone, and then back.
And she goes even further with a story from her days working as an engineer. And the context here is really vital.
Oh, the software manuals.
Yes.
Yeah.
She recalls instances where highly technical software manuals would suddenly contain altered text and changed specifications.
It's just wild.
And in software engineering, changes like that do not just happen. Every edit is tracked meticulously through version control logs and official release notes.
Right, there's always a paper trail.
Always. Yet, she would find that the text had undeniably changed. Her colleagues would swear it had always been written that way, and the digital commit logs would show absolutely zero updates.
No record at all.
None. Her own code still matched the old manual, but the manual itself had seemingly rewritten itself without a trace.
See, for a systems engineer, that scenario is the definition of a nightmare. The logs are the holy grail of truth in software development.
They are the absolute authority.
So if the logs say no human changed the text, but the text is physically different, that breaks the fundamental rules of reality. It's a glitch in the matrix.
It truly is. And rather than losing her mind trying to find the culprit who secretly hacked the system without leaving a footprint, she playfully attributes these anomalies to timeline jumps.
Timeline jumps.
Yeah, she posits the idea that as our personal frequency shifts, we subtly slide into parallel realities where minor details, like the location of a cologne bottle or the wording of a manual, are just slightly different.
Okay, before anyone gets entirely lost in multiverse theory here, let's ground this for a moment.
Good idea.
You do not need to accept the literal existence of teleporting cologne bottles or quantum timeline jumps to extract the deeply practical wisdom from her stories.
Not at all.
The core insight she is driving at isn't really about physics, it is about human psychology. The takeaway is that our absolute, unyielding desperation to find a culprit to explain the unknown is the very thing that traps us in a negative experience.
Because when you assume a culprit exists, you basically draft yourself into a war.
Right.
You mandate an adversarial reality where you are the victim and someone else is the enemy.
You force a conflict.
Exactly.
The full conversation is on the podcast, available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. A free workbook is waiting too. Link in bio.